Hey guys, wanted to do a video for the Calvinistic Contradiction. I don't think I've ever done a video on this channel before, so this might be my first one. I have other channels, Critical Thinking Out Loud. I have Harvest Harbor, but I wanted to do a video coming out of the Mavi Church, which is my church that I am a part of, that I helped start up here in Southwest Asia Minor. And coming over here, I live about 40 minutes away, so on the drive here, I was just thinking about this concept that I think will really help us, and I want to put it on here on the Calvinistic Contradiction because I've spoken about it on my other channels, and I think it will be helpful. I'm big ancient Near Eastern context of the Bible guy, so I talk about this a lot. This is basically what Critical Thinking Aloud is dedicated to, understanding this concept more and using this concept to be able to parse what we read in the Bible to help with our theology, i.e. the Calvinistic contradiction. I think, at least in my belief, if we would get into the ancient Near Eastern text, the ancient Near Eastern view of the biblical text, what the author's trying to communicate, I think the Calvinistic systematic just falls apart flat on its face. And this video I want to do with you, for you guys today, kind of covers that, and the ancient Near Eastern view of the, Eden on repeat. And even without that Eden on repeat part of it, we could get into that in another video. Specifically, I wanted to talk about just Eden. And so, what is Eden? Eden is not the whole world, as I think a lot of us, well-intending and maybe not putting too much thought into it. This is how I was in the past, that Eden was the whole world, and it's not. It says that God created the world, and in the eastern part of it, He creates a garden, and in the garden He puts Adam and Eve. So it's this tiny little piece of the world, which makes a lot of sense when you get into the Edenic Mandate, which is, go forth, multiply, and then do what? You change the whole world into Eden. That's the mandate. And so if the world was already Eden, what would be the point of the mandate? You wouldn't need that. It would just be go forth and multiply. But they're supposed to take care of the garden. They're supposed to, terraforming the world. And so basically the way that I've come to think about it is it's God's house. The ancient Near Eastern thought behind it is not a garden as we would look out the window. I'm looking at a garden literally right here. It's comprised of fruit trees, and there's chickens and stuff in there. That's not it. It's not where vegetables grow. It's literally a mountain. So it's the mountain of God, God's home, God's abode. And in the center of it is the tree of life, God Himself. He's the one who gives life to people. And so around it, you have waters gushing down. This is, in an arid place like the Near East where I'm at. Mountains have water, they have trees, they have fruit, they have olives, they have all these things. And so it's not that far of a stretch for this mind. Now, who's supposed to inhabit Eden? And that's where I want to kind of move into. The whole world, right? Go forth and multiply. You're supposed to multiply. You're supposed to fill up God's house. What does God want? He wants a big family. God doesn't just want this, this tiny little piece of righteous people that He, from the foundation of the world, preordained along with every other thing to inhabit His house. He wants everybody to inhabit His house. That's the mandate from the beginning. I think when we can rewind back to the beginning, let's go back to Genesis as much as we can and kind of look at these things. Okay, well, Adam sins, and then sin goes on to everybody else. Well, I don't believe that's what's recorded in the text, but let's just go with, the kind of overarching thing. Adam sins, how that's parsed out later in the doctrine and theology. Let's forget about that. Let's suspend that right now. Let's say Adam sins. Well, because of Adam's sin, is everybody cut off from birth? Absolutely not, because we don't read that in the text. We read that God is in communication. He is in relationship with who? Adam and his sons. Cain and Abel. And it's not like, oh, well, God predestined Abel to fall from the foundation of the world. We don't see that narrative anywhere in there. That is imported into the text. That's where I'm ultimately trying to go on this rant, kind of, is, we're reading the text without this slant, without this doctrinal slant, this, catechismic slant that isn't there in the original text. We can go back and we can read it, we can look, you can do that yourself, be a good Berean and do that. There's no Calvinism put onto there because, Adam, he sins, he falls. Now, everybody inherits, total depravity. Everybody is totally depraved because of Adam's sin. Well, what's going on with Abel and Cain and Abel? Where's the Calvinist? What's going on here? Cain and Abel are in relationship with God, right? It says that Abel's talking to God, Cain's talking to God. Why are you mad? If you would do this, you would have the same thing, right? And so where's that Calvinistic slant that, these guys are just like totally separated from God? I think they conflate separation and death as the same thing. They kind of just say, you're dead. Well, you're conflating two things. To be dead is to be spiritually separated. They'll just say, you're dead. You're dead in your sins. You can't do anything. What can a Calvinistic axiom? What can a dead man do except for lay there? A dead man walked home and he repented to his father and he came back to life and he was found in favor with his father. I mean, literally, what kind of language are we using when the Calvinistic systematic says that a dead man's dead, you can't do anything? Well, who's dead in the Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel story? Because if Adam, from one man, all sins, go on to each person in the Calvinistic worldview, not into the world, and the world's fallen, and everybody's going to fall, and therefore will fall. Let's not go down that rabbit trail right now. But just talking about that, what's going on with Cain and Abel? Why is one, doing what's right? Why is the other one say that he's not doing what's right, but he could do what's right? He said, if you would do what's right. And so, again, going back to this Edenic Mandate, where's the Calvinistic system fall into place? Sorry, I kicked the camera there. Fall into place for this. And that's where I kind of really want to, as I get into this stuff in the future, as I do more videos on these things. Sorry, it's been like 2 years that I haven't done videos. I've been doing a lot, wrote a book, did a bunch of stuff in this time period. But let's go back to those original texts and look at it in the original culture, in the original and ancient Near Eastern context. And I think the more that I've pressed into Calvinism, I have Calvinistic friends, the more that I've pressed into them and talking about these things, the more they kind of reel back and they have to just land on axioms that don't really make any sense, like what can a dead man do? Well, we're not talking about dead men. We're not even talking about separated men, except for the fact that they're not in the Garden of Eden anymore. They're in relationship with God. Clearly, they're talking with God. God showing him mercy. God's, talking with him and says, your brother's blood cries out. All this stuff. He's in this relationship with him. He's not just dead, cut off from the foundational world like some 5-point, 7-point Calvinists would brainwash you to believe. It's just not true. So let's go back into the text. Let's look at these from their original context with their original author's intent behind it, and let's start looking at the Calvinistic systematic in these situations. That way, when we move forward and we go into the New Testament, well, what is the New Testament writer's Bible? It's the Old Testament. And so they're going to be using references and drawing from the Old Testament. This is not that hard. And so let's use the original work so that when we get into the New Testament, when we get into the Calvinistic, Ephesians 2, Romans 8:9, we can draw out of the original context of what the biblical authors, what the New Testament authors are looking at from the biblical author's point of view. And I think as we get in here, as we've shown with Dr. Layton, who we really appreciate, it just kind of falls apart. It all falls apart when you look at it, this original context. We're going to do some fun videos too on, how Calvinists can't, it's an untenable systematic. So they say one thing and they act another. So, one that I want to do is what Leighton Flowers talked about one day, where he was saying, Piper, I really appreciate Piper saying, I don't really care for Piper that much, but I really appreciate Piper saying this: if you can't swallow the pill of Calvinism, don't leave Christianity. How can Piper say that? Leighton saying, man, I really like that. Yeah, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. How can you, in my view, how can you be true to yourself, at the very least? How can you be a Calvinistic pastor and say something like that? Your systematic doesn't allow that. Your belief system doesn't allow that. You cannot be a consistent Calvinist and say that kind of stuff. And this guy says some crazy stuff when it comes to, determinism and all deterministic God in a deterministic reality and all those kind of things. So I'll try to keep them a little bit shorter, but this is kind of like the initial one, and I'll probably clean up the background. Sorry if this light here is kind of annoying. I just wanted to jump on here and make it. I had a couple minutes to do it, and hopefully when I get this up on there, y'all will, leave comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think of this kind of looking at Calvinism from an ancient Near Eastern biblical author perspective to destroy the systematic. I mean, it's really simple when you get into it, but I'd love to walk down this road with y'all. So talk to you later. God bless.